where is the humility? Where are the occasions where a referee comes out and says, mea culpa? Do you know what? I only saw it in real time. Having looked at it since, I don't think it was a bad decision. What would be wrong with that? What's up, and welcome to the Guna channel. And before I get started, I do just want to say that I deliberated long and hard over whether to make this video, because there is a big part of me that just wants to move on. I don't want to waste my time talking about refereeing decisions, however bad, inexplicable, or unprecedented they are. Because when all's said and done, there's not much you can do about it. Michael Oliver makes a decision. VAR, for whatever reason, decides to not challenge it or ask him to go and look at it again. The PGMOL come and do what they always do, which is back their own. They are then allowed to appeal, and that appeal is then seen by an independent body who presumably agree with everybody else who saw Miles Lewis-Skelly's challenge as just a cynical yellow, the kind of foul that we see week in, week out. So there is a part of me that just thinks, what is the point in talking about this? But I think there is more at stake here. And increasingly, I think that a change is needed. But I also feel more and more as though that change may not come. And whatever we can do as fans to get to a place where the refereeing of our beautiful game matches the quality of the football. Because, look, week in, week out, we are told, because we are continuously being told that the Premier League is the best league in the world. Highest paid footballers, most exciting football, certainly I think so. It's the league I watch. It's the most watched, and it's also the most lucrative. There is more at stake for winning the Premier League than any other league, arguably. So you would expect the refereeing to at least match that, particularly in a country which has always prided itself on fair play, taking part being more important than winning. Correctness is part of the British mindset. So how is it possible that we have such appalling decisions made? And by appalling decisions, I do mean decisions which nobody can understand. Decisions that aren't made consistently across the game. Michael Oliver, though, I will say, may not deserve the lion's share of the blame for this situation. And I say that as an Arsenal fan. And look, when it was announced that he was going to be refereeing the match earlier in the season at the Etihad between Manchester City and Arsenal, there was shock, horror, bemusement. After all, Michael Oliver is the man who sent off, in the equivalent fixture, by the way, in 2022 when we went to Wolves, he sent off Martinelli. The only time I've seen it in my life, in my 40-something years as a football fan, the only time I can remember a player getting sent off for 2 yellow cards in the same action was Martinelli at Wolves. Shocking. Michael Oliver has now... And that was Michael Oliver. But it was also shocking to us because Michael Oliver in the game at the Emirates the season before failed to send off Kovacic for what was quite obviously at least 2 yellow cards and possibly a straight red. His first tackle on Martin Odegaard, which was worse than Miles Lewis-Skelly's on Saturday, elicited only a yellow card despite being dangerous. And then 6 minutes later, when Kovacic had lost his head and went in on Declan Rice, he didn't even get a yellow card. And again, that tackle was worse than the one that Miles Lewis-Skelly was guilty of on Saturday. And when it came out after the event that he had decided not to send Kovacic off because he didn't want to ruin the spectacle, you could understand why Arsenal fans weren't necessarily keen on having this man referee a game against City again. But it's more than that even. And on the day, he sent off Trossard, apparently not as bothered about the spectacle of the game as he'd been the season before, for a yellow card on Savinho, which I think is fair, for shirt pulling. But the second yellow card was for kicking the ball away seconds after he'd blown the whistle, for apparently delaying the restart, even though the free kick couldn't have been taken because the player was down and injured. So it's essentially, he sent him off on principle. He sent him off because now there is this big drive to stop time wasting in a game which went on 99 minutes anyway, by the way. And the second time in the season that Arsenal had a player sent off for kicking a ball away, whilst in the same game, Doku had kicked the ball away and not received a yellow card for it. And the answer to that was, and the reason that was given was because Doku was kicking it generally in the right direction. So So Michael Oliver is no Arsenal fan's favourite referee. I think that's fair to say. But is this just Arsenal's persecution complex, our victim mentality, whinging about things that happen to all clubs equally, but we just make more noise and bleat about it because we've got a larger social media presence? No. And I think if you think that, then you need to take a look at the statistics. Michael Oliver has now refereed 55 games involving Arsenal, and he has produced a red card for Arsenal players 8 times. That's more than any other team. The next nearest are Everton, who he's ref 52 times with 5. Tottenham, 45 times with 5 cards. In that time, he has yet to show Manchester City a single red card or give an opposing team playing Manchester City a penalty. That's right. There are no penalties against Manchester City in Michael Oliver's history. Despite the fact that there are roughly the similar amount of fouls in games involving Arsenal and Manchester City, he's given 97 yellow cards against us and only 68 against Manchester City. I mean, you'd be forgiven for looking at these stats and thinking, what an industrial and malicious team Arsenal must be. Is that your impression of us? If you're an Arsenal fan, I'm guessing no. If you're watching this and you're not, if you're a neutral, an unbiased fan, maybe I'd want to hear from you, actually, if you do just think we are a dirty team. I don't think we're dirty enough at times. I was almost swayed into wanting Bruno Guimaraes to join us because, frankly, we lack a little bit of that in midfield. After all, his forearm smash against Jorginho in a match at St James's Park last season wasn't even considered violent conduct. There are teams out there that seem to get away with more than we do. Miles Lewis-Skelly's moment might be the straw that broke the camel's back for some people, because it is rare to see everyone united in disbelief. I have trawled the internet to find the people who think that he should have been sent off, and I found one, and that's Stevie Nicol, who's not exactly somebody that can be relied on to say nice things about Arsenal. He feels it was a cynical challenge and that Miles Lewis-Skelly should be sent off for that because it was reckless and dangerous. Didn't hurt anyone ultimately, but he was lucky not to, and in Steve Nicol's view, he could have done worse, and it's about time that these sorts of things were red carded. Here's the problem with that, though. If you hold that view, then prepare to see a lot more red cards, because Miles Lewis-Skelly's challenge breaks up play in a way that Rodri famously does a lot. Granit Xhaka did for us. That intelligent footballers, rather than allow opposition players to bomb forward, will commit a cynical tackle to break up the game. They just don't usually get sent off for it. And it's quite a massive change to football if you suddenly think that now that's going to be a red card offence. So one of the reasons I'm doing this video is because it was so predictable. But as I said right at the beginning, maybe Michael Oliver isn't to blame. After all, look, he sees Lewis-Skelly's challenge in real time. In that flash of a moment, perhaps he didn't take long enough before showing the red card. Perhaps he was sure what he saw was dangerous and cynical, unsportsmanlike and worthy of a red card. Perhaps that's forgivable. After all, he didn't get to see it the way that we all did. He was right on top of it. Maybe he should have taken long to think about it, but what he thought he saw, a red card was appropriate. Now it goes to Darren England in the VAR room in Stockley Park. And from what I understand about their verdict was, they also felt that this was a standard red card offence, even though no one has seen a red card given in similar circumstances. So what you end up with is the idea that a referee seeing it in real time can make a mistake. But people in that room at Stockley Park are disconnected from the view of football that everybody else has. That's a simple conclusion I think is unarguable. The people in the VAR room, Darren England, is looking at that as a red card, apparently and seemingly unaware that it's never been a red card offence before, that no one gets sent off for these, that these happen week in, week out and don't get sent off. So what's going on in VAR is the question again. And I think we've all been asking that far too often. Apparently, Norway is doing away with VAR. Whether it's possible that the game could just turn its back on VAR, I don't know. But I don't think anyone would bemoan its loss. But assuming we're going to stick with it, what is the change that needs to happen? Well, it seems fairly obvious to say this, but forgive me. Perhaps you need people in that room who've watched football before, who make decisions based on football matches they've seen before, and who could go, that's not a red card. Like everybody else, every other commentator, every other pundit, every other fan watching it said. And how do you achieve that? One start would be to maybe not have them be best friends with the referees. And when you hear the tapes, it's all nicknames they use for each other. I feel like they didn't want to throw Michael Oliver under the bus and say he'd made a mistake. But I feel they did throw him under the bus because they could have asked him to go and look at it on the monitor. And had he looked at it on the monitor in slow motion with a couple of different angles and still decided it was a red card, then you could point the finger of blame at Michael Oliver. Beyond these two entities, beyond the VAR room at Stockley Park and Michael Oliver in real time, there's a PGMOL. And isn't it just so utterly predictable that they come out and circle the wagons defending Michael Oliver, deflecting instead to the vile and abhorrent abuse he's received, to VAR saying, well, they're not really supposed to give their judgments. They're just there to uphold. You make sure he hasn't made a mistake and, you can appeal it. And we all know we're going to appeal it. And I think how it would be possible to put an independent appeal panel together that doesn't think this is just a yellow card is beyond me, and it won't happen. Clip this. We will win this appeal. Miles Lewis-Skelly's red card will be overturned, and then the big question will survive. How has it been possible that everyone in football can see this isn't a red card except the people that matter most on the day? And what would the ramifications of this have been if that red card had cost us the 3 points? Because in every other game we've received a red card. From the Brighton match where Declan Rice was sent off, we gave away 3 points by conceding an equaliser. Man City, we gave away 3 points by conceding an equaliser. Bournemouth, we lost all 3 points, having to play 60-something minutes with only 10 men against a really good Bournemouth side. And against Wolves was the first time we've managed to get all 3 points. But it might have been so different. Liverpool fans were already rubbing their hands with glee that the title race was going to be over. Millions and millions, billions of pounds are at stake in this competition. And we allow people to make decisions that none of us understand. That does not happen in any other sport. But more importantly, it doesn't seem to happen in any other league. It doesn't happen anywhere else you watch football. This level of bizarre decision making is not being experienced elsewhere. So what are the changes needed? The obvious one is let's get rid of VAR. But more importantly, let's have these conversations and let's hold some people accountable. And also, can we just please not have Michael Oliver referee any more Arsenal games, at least for a little bit? He actually came out and said he hopes he doesn't referee. It's just not worth the hassle. It seems a weird one to me. If you go to work and absolutely fuck up, that you can be coming out going, I don't want to do that anymore. It's not worth the hassle. Where is the humility? Where are the occasions where a referee comes out and says, mea culpa? Do you know what? I only saw it in real time. Having looked at it since, I don't think it was a bad decision. What would be wrong with that? What is wrong with an entity like PGMOL saying, do you know what? We're all human. He made a mistake in real time. God knows what Darren England was doing in the VAR box, but we'll have a word with him. We'll make sure this doesn't happen again. We don't want to see every tackle like that awarded a red card from now on. So we've got to do something about it and make it right. Let me know in the comments what you think. I'm sure there's a few of you watching this that think, it's just Arsenal whinging again. I really don't want to. We got the 3 points. We move on. Hopefully without so much Michael Oliver in our lives. But before I go, can I also just make finally the point, and I think this is important, that it's very hard to understand how there isn't at least a perception of a conflict of interests when Michael Oliver is paid £20,000 a day to referee matches in United Arab Emirates by the owners of Manchester City. You would think that would constitute enough of a conflict of interest that he wasn't allowed to manage another Manchester City match, let alone have the kind of record he does where he doesn't send off any of their players or disallow any of their goals even though they're blatantly offside, or give away penalties even if you're kung fu kicking somebody in the chest. you'd think just for the PR of it, just for the optics of it, Michael Oliver would be avoided around Manchester City games. How funny, though, if it turns out he's refereeing the game between us on the weekend. Funny in a way that I probably have to be sedated for. But let me know in the comments if you think I'm just whinging. Also want to hear from you if you have any opinions that differ or what you think about this. Let me know in the comments below. And until I see you on Tuesday night for the Adams Arms at 10:30, be lucky. Lots of love.